अक्षरसमाम्नयमधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृष्णं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनीय नमः। वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयं नत्वा सरस्वतीं देवीं शुद्धां गुण्यां करोम्यहं पाणिनीयप्रवेशाय लघुसिद्धान्तकौमुदीम्। सो पूर्वस्मिन् वर्गे अस्माभिः हलन्त्यम् इति एकमेव सूत्रं विस्तरेण दृष्टं। तत्र तत्र हलन्त्यम् इत्यस्य सूत्रस्य विषये विद्यमानः अन्योन्याश्रयः, तस्य भिन्नानि समाधानानि. Some of you might agree to some of them, some of you might not agree, but a broad array of 6 different solutions have been presented in various commentaries. अद्य अग्रे गच्छामः अदर्शनं लोपः इति अग्रिमं सूत्रम्. पदद्वयात्मकमिदं सूत्रम् अदर्शनम् एंड लोपः. कः अर्थः?
यत्र दृश्यमानं पदम् अत्र न दृश्यते, पूर्वं दृश्यमानं पदं न दृश्यते
तत्र लोपसंज्ञा भवति. सो पदद्वयात्मकमिदं सूत्रं
दर्शनम् अदर्शनम्.
I will come to that. So padadvayatmakam sutram, 2 words are there, adarshanam and lopaha. So first thing we want to do is uddeshya vidheya bhava. Who is the uddesha, who is the vidheya?
Lopaha is a vidheya, adarshanam is the uddeshya.
Uddesha. This is a samnya sutram. Lopaha iti samnya diyate. So lopa is the samnya that is being told. So lopaha iti vidheyam. Kasya nama lopaha, adarshanasya nama lopaha. Adarshanam is the entity that we already know. So adarshanam iti uddeshyam, lopaha iti vidheyam. Okay, pada parichayah. Let's start with lopaha. Katham siddhyati ayam shabdaha?
Lupa iti, no.
Lupa. So, correct. Kasmin gane vidyate lupa iti dhatuhu? So this is the lupachedane. Sixth gana. Taudadikaha lupa iti dhatuhu. So tukde karna, lupt karna iti api arthaha asti. So to disappear, lumpati iti rupam bhavati. So lumpati, lumpataha, lumpanti. Tatra lupa iti prayena prathame gane api dhatu asti. Lupa vimohane. चतुर्थे गणे अस्ति लुप विमोहने, परंतु to be confused, to be afraid, kashana bhinnaha artha. There doesn't seem to be a dhatu called lopa, so we have to start with lupa and do an upadha guna to get lopa. So lupa plus ghai pratyayah asti. Lupa dhatoho ghai pratyayah bhave vidhiyate. The act of disappearance itself is called lopa. The act of destruction is called lopa. So lopa is generated using the ghai pratyaya. Adarshanam. This is where things become very interesting. What is adarshanam? Let's keep a aside for now. Darshana. What is darshana? Drusha dhatoho kaha pratyayah?
Ta pratyayah?
Lut pratyayah.
Lut pratyayah. Drusha dhatoho lut pratyayah. Lu ityasya. Correct. Lu ityasya ana iti bhavati. Drusha plus ana darshana. This is always in the napumsakalinga. So napumsake bhavektah lut cha. So lut is always in the napumsakalinga. Pathanam, lekhanam, hasanam, kridanam, jalpanam, rodanam, and so on. Adarshanam. So darshanam is in the napumsakalinga. Adarshanam iti kidrishaha samasah.
Nai tatpurusha.
Nai tatpurusha samasa is one answer. Anything else?
Nai bahuvrihi.
Nai bahuvrihi is another answer. Anything else? Let's do the vigraha. If we treat this as nai tatpurusha, samasa vigraha katham bhavati?
Na darshanam.
Na darshanam. If we take it as nai bahuvrihi, samasa vigraha katham bhavati?
Avidyamanam.
Avidyamanam darshanam yasya saha. Not avidyamanam darshanam. Avidyamanam darshanam yasya saha. Okay. So which of these is correct? Is this nai tatpurusha? Is this nai bahuvrihi? Or is this completely different thing?
न अत्र प्रायः नै बहुव्रीहि एव खलु इदानीं वर्णः आसीत् तस्य इदानीं अदर्शनं भवति सो अविद्यमानदर्शनं यस्य सः इति
अविद्यमानं सम्यक् सो अविद्यमानं दर्शनं यस्य सः इत्यत्र बहुव्रीहि समासेन कस्य निर्देशः भवति वर्णस्य निर्देशः भवति so are you calling the varna as adarshana? You understand what I'm saying? Adhanaha. If you break it as a bahuvrihi samasa, Avidyamanam dhanam yasya saha adhanaha, that is a person who does not have the dhana. Aputraha, avidyamanaha putraha yasya saha, that is a person who does not have a putra. So is this the varna who does not have the visibility being called
वर्णस्य
adarshan?
अदर्शनम् एव किल
Varnasya adarshanam asti, varnaha adarshana samyakah nasti. You understand? So if you try to break it using bahuvrihi, अविद्यमानं दर्शनं यस्य सः वर्णः अदर्शन सम्यकः नास्ति, अतः अत्र बहुव्रीहि समासः प्रायेण सम्यक् रूपेण न भवितुमर्हति. This is clear. If not, I'm happy to explain. Wait. Darshanasya abhavah. What kind of samasa is that?
अव्ययी भाव
Avyayi bhava samasa. So we have a third candidate now. Very nice. So we have a bahuvrihi candidate, avidyamanam darshanam yasya saha. We have a tatpurusha candidate, na darshanam adarshanam. We have an avyayi bhava candidate, darshanasya abhavaha adarshanam. Makshikanam abhavaha nirmakshikam is the stock example given. Darshanasya abhavaha adarshanam. Let's quickly recollect or learn.
निर्दर्शनम् इति भवति खलु.
तत्र नित्यं निर्भवेत् इति नास्ति, अ इति अपि भवितुम् अर्हति. So that's what I want to answer that question. So let's take a look at the sutras which give all these three. So which sutra gives nay bahuvrihi? Anekamanya padarthe is a sutram. Anekamanya padarthe is a stock sutram for bahuvrihi samasa. Anytime you say yasya saha, yasmin saha, you can always take it as anekamanya padarthe. There is also nayah asti arthanam vachyaha. So there is a vartikam that specifically gives the samasa for nay bahuvrihi. So we can take a quick look at this particular vartika. So naya asti arthanam bahuvrihi. And the example given is avidyamanaha putraha yasya saha avidyamana putraha or aputraha iti api bhavitum arhati. Okay, uttarapada lopaha is part of the vartika. So nayah asti arthanam bahuvrihi vachyaha uttarapada lopaha. So avidyamana putra. So that vidyamana, which is the uttarapada of the previous part, is removed and we just get a putra. So the stock sutram for bahuvrihi samasa is anekamanya padarthe. 99% of the bahuvrihi samasas are given by anekamanya padarthe 2 to 24. And there is a vartikam in this particular sutram that specifically gives the naya bahuvrihi samasa. So bahuvrihi is always anya padartha pradhana. Avidyamanaha putraha yasya saha. Pitam ambaram yasya saha. So pitambara is neither pita nor ambara. He is the person who wears the pitambara. So pitam ambaram yasya saha. Iti anena prakarena bahuvrihi is anya padartha pradhana. So in this current context, we have to use this vartika nayastyarthanam bahuvrihi vachyaha cha uttarpadalopaha vaktavyaha, and we get the bahuvrihi samasa. But that does not fit in the current context, because if you try to resolve this using bahuvrihi, it would represent a letter which is not visible, which is not what we want. We want a concept. The disappearance is to be called as lopa. That's what we say, right? Adarshanam lopaha. Okay, so bahuvrihi is out of question. Let's go to the second candidate, tatpurusha. Nay tatpurusha samasaha. Which is the sutram? Nay. Okay, 2 to 6. Nay. Nay is the sutram that gives tatpurusha samasa. So nay samarthena subantena sah samasyate tatpurusha samasaha bhavati. Na brahmanaha abrahmanaha, na vrishalaha avrishalaha. Very simple example, like na darshanam adarshanam. So it looks like a very valid match. Na darshanam adarshanam. Na darshanam is called lopa. Any particular objections that anybody want to raise on this clarification?
उत्तरपदार्थ प्राधान्यं.
Correct. Tatpurusha samasa in general is uttarapadartha pradhana. So just a primer, all the 4 type of samasas, this is a general classification. Bahuvrihi is almost always anya padartha pradhana. Tatpurusha is uttarapadartha pradhana. Avyay bhava is purva padartha pradhana. Dvandva is ubhaya padartha pradhana. Having said that, within Tatpurusha, there are cases where you actually have Purva Padartha Pradhana. So Prathama Tatpurusha, for example, is not Uttara Padartha Pradhana. It is Purva Padartha Pradhana. So we are not learning samasas, but there are different exceptions in each of them. We can, on a high level do this kind of classification, but this is not a rule that has been prescribed anywhere in Ashtadhyayi. Okay, but your general comment is correct. Tatpurusha samasa in general is Uttara Padartha Pradhana.
न ब्राह्मणः अत्रापि उत्तरपदप्राधान्यमेव अस्ति वा तत्र ब्राह्मणः परन्तु तत्र न अपि मुख्यम् इति भाति किल तत्
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. So is Nay Tatpurusha Uttara Padartha Pradhana or is it not Uttara Padartha Pradhana? Let's discuss that because that is at the heart of Adarshanam Lopaha also. So is Nay Tatpurusha Uttara Padartha Pradhana or not? What do you think?
seems like a ubhaya padartha pradhana, like
okay, so more importantly, it seems like a Purva Padartha Pradhana because Na is carrying an extreme weightage over there. Na Brahmana is actually reverse of Brahmana. So if at all it is non-Uttara Padartha Pradhana. The meaning of the Uttara Padartha has been completely removed and the meaning of negation has been imposed on it. So this is the exact same question that is being asked in the beginning of Mahabhashyam. Kim pradhanaha ayam samasaha. He starts with this burning question. Kim pradhanaha ayam samasaha. Is it Purva Padartha Pradhana, Uttara Padartha Pradhana, Ubhaya Padartha Pradhana, Anya Padartha Pradhana? And then he keeps on discussing Uttara Padartha Pradhanaha, then some argument is there. Anya Padartha Pradhanaha, some argument is there. Purva Padartha Pradhanaha, some argument is there. So he keeps on taking each case and keeps on doing an argument. We will not go in the details because we are not learning Mahabhashyam right now. But here is the summary. He takes all these concepts, goes over one by one, and finally he gives a conclusion that let us take this as Uttara Padartha Pradhana itself. So he analyzes all the cases and finally he gives the conclusion Athava Punaha Astu Uttara Padartha Pradhanaha. Let's assume this as Uttara Padartha Pradhana. Now we are not going into all kind of analysis that is being presented in the Bhashya, but the conclusion over here is that the example that we are talking, na brahmanaha abrahmanaha, tasya vishaye tatra bhashakarena kimuchyate abrahmanam anaya. If you take a statement like abrahmanam anaya, are you going to bring a stone? Are you going to bring an animal? Are you going to bring a book? If I ask you brahmanam anaya, what will you bring? You will bring a human being who is not a Brahmin. So Brahmana bhinnaha Brahmana sadrishaha kashchana asti tasya anayanam bhavati saha aniyate. Therefore, in the interpretation of the word Abrahmana, the Uttarapada still plays a very valuable role. You have to look at Brahmana and you have to use your interpretation to find a person who is similar to a Brahmana. Abrahmana ityukte Brahmana bhinnaha Brahmana sadrushaha.
but we shouldn't bring brahmana also, right? We should bring the not brahmana. That na also is important, right?
That meaning is already conveyed with na. The question is what is pradhana in the samasa. We are not saying these other entities are useless. Pitam ambaram yasya saha, neither pita is useless nor ambara is useless. But is that pradhana? Is that being reflected in the final person? So the final person that is being brought is not an act of negation. It is an act of bringing somebody who is not a Brahmin. Therefore, there is a further discussion over here. There is finally a conclusion that we take this as Uttara Padartha Pradhana. Bala Manorama or some other commentary, let's actually take a look at it, actually elaborates very beautifully on this, and he says this samasa is actually Uttara Padartha Sadrusha Pradhana.
पूर्वपद पदार्थ न भवितुं शक्नोति खलु बिकॉज़ पदस्य क्रियापदेन सह अन्वेति इति दृश्यते चेत् तत्र ब्राह्मणः नास्ति किन्तु ब्राह्मणः इव पुरुषः एव भवेत् खलु
करेक्ट सो कस्य शब्दस्य क्रियापदेन सह अन्वयः भवति न इत्यस्य अन्वयः न भवति. दैट्स एक्झॅक्टली व्हाट आई आस्क्ड. द ब्रिंगिंग इज नॉट बीइंग नेगेटेड, ब्राह्मण इज बीइंग नेगेटेड, and therefore a brahmana is finally being taken as the uttara padartha pradhana samasa. Clear? Give me 1 minute, let me take a look at this sadrisha word. I have read it in उत्तर पदार्थ सदृश समासार्थः जायते. Which commentary was this? न्यास. So ब्राह्मणं न आनय ब्राह्मण सदृशम आनय इति उक्त्वा तच्च सादृश्यादृते न संभवति इति प्रतिषेधे सति उत्तर पदार्थ सदृश समानार्थः जायते. So eventually the final conclusion in the bhashya is that we retain this as uttara padartha pradhana and we interpret using the concept of sadrishya न ब्राह्मणम आनय इत्युक्ते ब्राह्मण सदृशम अन्यम मनुष्यम आनय. Clear? With this background, now let's go back to adarshanam lopaha and ask ourselves, is adarshanam a tatpurusha samasa? When we say adarshanam bhavati, is it darshana sadrusham but darshana bhinnam? It is not darshana sadrusham. Understand the difference between abrahmana and adarshana. Abrahmanaha vidyate, abrahmanaha khadati. The meaning of the phrase abrahmanaha khadati is brahmana sadrushaha brahmana bhinnaha khadati. But adarshanam bhavati does not mean darshana sadrusham darshana bhinnam bhavati. You see the difference between the two statements? Let me repeat this. A brahmana has a clear uttara padartha pradhanyam because abrahmana bhavati means brahmana sadrushaha brahmana bhinnaha bhavati. But adarshanam bhavati does not mean darshana sadrushaha darshana bhinnaha bhavati. It is actually opposite. Darshanasya abhavaha bhavati is adarshanam, not darshana sadrushaha darshana bhinnaha. Therefore, tatpurush samasa is not a valid candidate. Therefore, we don't have bahuvrihi samasa and we don't have tatpurush samasa. We go to the third component, avvibhava samasa. Which is the sutra?
Lopaha is actually tad asti parantu na drishyate iti eva khalu.
Correct. Parantu darshana sadrusham asti va? Is it like related to being visible? Understand this. A brahmana is related to brahmana. You don't bring a stone when you say a brahmana manaya. You bring a kshatriya, for example. Or you bring somebody who is not yet Brahmin but will be a Brahmin, say after the threading ceremony or whatever. You get what I'm saying? In the same way, when you say adarshanam bhavati, is it like darshana bhinnam but darshana sadrusham, like shravanam or like whatever, sparshaha? These things might be called as darshana sadrusha but darshana bhinna, or some kind of cognition. Is anything of that happening when you say lopa? No. No. So this cannot be considered as tatpurusha samasa. Adarshanam ityatra yadi tatpurusha samasa svikriyate tarhi darshana sadrushaha parantu darshana bhinnaha. So what is darshana sadrusha? Maybe shravanam is darshana sadrusha, maybe sparshaha is darshana sadrusha, maybe some kind of special vision is darshana sadrusha. So all those components will be there. So is lopa a type of shravana? Is lopa a type of sparsha? Is lopa a type of smell? Is lopa a type of a special vision? If it would have been any of those, we could have said it is darshana bhinnam, darshana sadrusham. But it's none of these. We cannot use lopa we cannot use the word darshana bhinnam, darshana sadrusham to indicate lopa.
But then how would you ever use a darshanam as a naitat purusha? Or is it not?
So we don't use adarshanam as the naitat purusha. That's what I'm coming to. So just like the way we say it is not bahuvrihi, it is not tat purusha. And that brings us to
I'm not talking about in the context of this sutram. I'm just saying, can the word adarshanam ever be a naitat purusha?
If you want to use it in the context of, shravanam bhavati. Now, for example, if you want to construct a statement which says darshanam na bhavati parantu shravanam bhavati. So you might be able to say adarshanam bhavati and you might be able to interpret it as a tatpurusha.
Okay?
परन्तु अस्मिन् सन्दर्भे किं भवति? नै बहुव्रीहि समासः नास्ति, नै तत्पुरुष समासः नास्ति. Who is the third candidate? Who is the third candidate? Avyayi bhava samasa. Which is the sutram?
दीर्घसूत्रम् अस्ति खलु. अव्ययम्
Avyayam
समीप
vibhakti
समृद्धि
samruddhi
वृद्धि
vruddhi artha bhava. You can stop there because that is what we need. So avyayam vibhakti sameepa samruddhi vruddhi artha bhava. Arthasya abhavaha. So look at this. Vibhakti sameepa samruddhi vruddhi. Ignore this. Artha bhava. Arthasya abhavaha artha bhava. That's exactly what we need. Darshana iti shabdasya yaha arthaha tasya abhavaha. Ityukte opposite of darshanam, that is adarshanam. So darshanasya abhavaha adarshanam. The example that is given, as you correctly mentioned, is usually using nirmakshikam. Makshikanam abhavaha nirmakshikam. But there is no rule that a particular upasarga needs to be used. Multiple upasargas can be used as long as the meaning is conveyed. So abhavaha ityasmin arthe atra avyayi bhava samasah asti. Darshanasya abhavaha adarshanam. That is being called as lopa. Clear? So not bahuvrihi, not tatpurusha, but avyayi bhava. And this exactly purva padartha, right? Negation is being emphasized. Lop is negation. And that's what we are going to come right now. It's not just the negation of darshana, but it is the negation of everything that is similar to darshana. So it's a real negation that is being focused. So this, if I'm not mistaken, has been explained in Bala Manorama. Artha bhave avyayi bhavaha. Darshanasya abhavaha adarshanam. Artha bhave avyayi bhavaha. Clear? Avyayam vibhakti sameepa samruddhi vruddhi artha bhava. Artha bhave avyayi bhavaha. And vigraha vakya is darshanasya abhavaha adarshanam. And as I was mentioning, this is not just darshanasya abhavaha, but it is the abhava of all related cognition. And therefore, right over here, see beautiful explanation of Kashika. Adarshanam, ashravanam, anucharanam, anupalabdhihi, abhavaha, varna vinashaha. You can use whichever word you want. All of these can be used in the context of lopa. So they indicate the different aspects of the same concept. Adarshanam, not being visible. Ashravanam, not heard. Anucharanam, it's not being pronounced. Anupalabdhihi, it is not available over there. Abhava, it just does not exist. Sometimes things exist, but they are not available. But that's not the point. It's neither available nor does it even exist over there. Varna vinashaha, it has been destroyed. Etaihi shabdaihi yaha abhidhiyate tasya lopaha iti samnya bhavati. Anything that you can conceptually understand as adarshanam, ashravanam, anucharanam, anupalabdhi, blah, 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 tasya lopaha iti samnya bhavati. Clear? Okay. Let's compare vruddhiradaich, which is yet another samnya sutram, with adarshanam lopaha, another samnya sutram. Okay. A samnya sutram has two components. We have a samnya and we have a samni. What is a samnya? The entity that is being defined is called a samnya. What is the samni? The entity which gets that particular term is called samni. So in adarshanam lopaha, who is the samnya? Lopaha is the samnya. Who is the samni? Adarshanam is the samni, is the entity that is being called a lopa. Compare with vruddhiradich. Who is the samnya? Vruddhihi is the samnya. Who is the samni? Adaich is the samni. Clear? So in a samnya sutram, you always have a samnya and a samni. What is the fundamental difference between the interpretations of vruddhiradich on one hand and adarshanam lopaha on another hand. In the Vruddhiradaic Sutram, the a, I and au, whatever has been told by Adaich, is verbatim given the samnya Vruddhi. You don't care about the meaning of a or I or au. The letters or the physical anupurvi, the characters a, I and au are being given the samnya Vruddhi. In adarshanam lopaha, it is not the word adarshanam which is being given the samnya lopa. Let me take another example. There is a sutram taktavatu nishtha. Samnya sutram. Taktavatu are being called nishtha. Nishtha iti samnya. Taktavatu iti samni. Here also you see very similar to Vruddhiradech. Kta and ktavatu are verbatim being called as samnya, are as nishtha. Even if you do not know what is the meaning of ta and tavatu, what you know is that ta and tavatu are being called nishtha. Tarap tama paugha. The tarap pratyaya and tama pratyaya are being called gha. You don't need to know what these pratyayas are, they are called gha. But here that's not the case. The word adarshanam is not called lopa. The meaning, the concept behind adarshanam is called lopa. The artha of the term is being used over here, unlike Vruddhiradech, where the verbatim a, I and au. A is sometimes generated by dirgha, savarna dirgha, sometimes generated by Vruddhi, sometimes generated by something else. We don't really care how that a is generated or what kind of meaning does it carry. All that we say is the physical entity a is Vruddhi. That's not what we say over here. The physical anupurvi adarshana is not lopa. The meaning behind the word adarshanam is lopa. That's what he says further. Arthasya iyam samyana shabdasya. This term is for the artha. It is not for the shabda. This has to be compared and contrasted against other sutras. Vruddhiradej, taktavatu nishtha, taraptama paughaha, and so on. Arthasya samnya asti, shabdasya samnya nasti. I don't think Sudha Teeka talks about this context. He does not. So, but this is an important point to understand.
लोके अपि लुप्यते इति प्रयोगः अस्ति महोदय.
That is for the lupa dhatu, right? That is for the lupyate is for the lupa dhatu.
तर्हि किमर्थं अर्थं दातव्यं? लुप्यते इत्यस्य अर्थः अदर्शनम् इति एव खलु?
तर्हि व्याकरणशास्त्रे लोपः इति शब्दः विशिष्टेन रूपेण प्रयुज्यते इति स्पष्टीकर्तुम् अदर्शनं लोपः इति अत्र शब्दः दीयते. That's a very good question actually, and that reminds me of another aspect. This is actually called anvartha samya. What is anvartha samya? A samya which follows its meaning. The literal meaning of the word lopa in the language, in the bhasha, is very similar to the meaning of the word in the Vyakarana Shastra. So we call it as Anvartha Samya. Compare and contrast this with Vruddhiradech. Vruddhi is technically not Anvartha Samya. You don't, the meaning of growth in the actual language has nothing to do with a, I and au. I mean, you can always do all sorts of analogies and explain why a, I and au are called Vruddhi and how it relates to growth and so on. But in general, the words like Vruddhi and Guna, they don't have anything to do with the real meaning in the language.
The grammatical term.
Grammatical terms. This is also a grammatical term, but this carries the similar meaning as that of the language. Another example is Bahu Gana Vatudati Sankhya. Sankhya is basically Anvartha Samya. 1, 2, 3, Ekam, Dve, Trini, Chatvari are also called Sankhyas. Is carried in the grammar also. So these terms like Sankhya or say Lopa is Anvartha Samya. This is also explained in one of the commentaries, but let's not go. We'll end up reading all the commentaries.
लुपः तत्र I agree. भिन्न sounding शब्दः अस्ति. लुक् इत्यस्य.
So look, shlu, lupa, these are grammatical terms. Lopa is also a grammatical term which has the same meaning as that of the lopa.
Yatha upapadam.
Yatha upapadam. Upapadam is Anvartha Samya. Correct. Okay. Agre gacchamaha. So what all did we see? लोपः इति विधेयम्, अदर्शनम् इति उद्देश्यम्, अदर्शनम् इत्यत्र अव्ययीभावसमासः अस्ति, अविद्यमानं दर्शनम् अदर्शनं पूर्वपदार्थप्रधानः, अदर्शन इत्यस्यैव भिन्नाः अर्थाः तत्र अश्रवणम् अनुच्चारणम् अनुपलब्धिः अभावः वर्णविनाशः इति सर्वे काशिकाकारेण दत्ताः, तथा च अदर्शनं लोपः इत्यत्र अर्थस्य संज्ञा भवति, आनुपूर्वेः संज्ञा न भवति. Is all that we saw. We have not even entered the commentary. This is all the introductory discussion. Now we will enter the Laghu Siddhanta commentary, Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi commentary. Prasaktasya adarshanam lopasamyam syat. He uses his own word over there. Prasakta. That word is not there in the sutram. Okay. Prasaktasya. He doesn't say adarshanam lopasamyam syat. See, vruddhi radech. How do you interpret? Adech vruddhi samyam syat. You should have said same thing, right? Adarshanam lopasamyam syat. Introduces one more word. Prasaktasya adarshanam lopasamyam syat. What business is this prasakta?
No, here is he meaning the technical term prasaktihi? Vyakarane prasaktihi शब्दस्य अर्थं किमस्ति? तस्य रेफरेन्स् अत्र भवति वा प्रसक्तस्य अदर्शनम्?
So
अथवा भाषायां प्रसक्तः इति शब्दस्य अर्थः अस्ति वा अत्र उपयोगः?
So prasakta is not a vyakarana samnya. Panini does not define a term called prasakta like he defines vruddhi or lopa or sanyoga. Right?
But the way we use prasaktihi in vyakarana shastra, is little different, isn't it?
That is correct. That is correct. So prasakti that we use in the statements of explaining or in the commentaries is different. Like you use prapti for some reasons and prasakti for some other reasons, and that's different. Prasakta is not a grammatical term. So what he is trying to use prasakta over here is essentially same as what you are trying to say, which is same as the almost same as the meaning in the language. So I'm actually coming to that. So if you look in the finer details, there is a small difference between the word prapti and prasakti. The word prapti is usually reserved for situations where something has a possibility of coming, but it doesn't eventually appear. Some
That's
other
how we
person
learn.
or some other sutram overrides it. That kind of scenario usually use the word prapti. Word prasakti is usually reserved for cases where actually it appears, like the entity is over there. Okay. So this is how you have to. Yes.
Prapti pra plus apl plus tin, correct? I would have understood prapti as something acquired or acquirable, and prasakti probably asidhatu sattayam.
Sanja dhatu. We'll come to that. Sanja dhatu.
Okay. Okay. So then I would have thought prasakti is the existence of something, and prapti is the acquiring of something.
So
I would have guessed it like that.
Sanja is basically used. See, Sangha is a very well-known word, right? So
Yes.
Sanja is used for close contacts, not Sanyoga. Sanyoga is Yuja dhatu. Some kind of contact, some kind of association, some kind of is there in the over here, to hug, to embrace, to stay in close contact. So that is the original meaning of Sanja dhatu. Now, how you use it in the general language, we can keep that aside. Specifically in the grammar, you many times you use this interchangeably. I have seen people using this interchangeably, but the fine level meaning difference between prasakti and prapti is that eventually the entity that gets mandated, we refer it by saying prasakti asti. If it just comes up and just gets overridden by something else, you do not say prasakti, you use the word prapti over there. You get what I'm saying?
No,
right?
No, they didn't. Could you repeat that?
See, if you have a sutram, if you have a step in the prakriya, let's take a simple example of bala plus au. Now, bala plus au balau, how is it created? What are the sutras that come over there? Tell me. Prathamayoho purva savarnaha will come there. Prathamayoho purva savarna will Prathamayoho purva savarna will be blocked by nadichi, and therefore you finally get vridhirechi. अतः अस्य वर्णनं कथं कुर्मः? बाल प्लस औ इत्यत्र Pratmayo purvasavarna iti prapte. Iti prapte means it is now being, mandated, or it is being now summoned to come over there. Parantu nadichi iti saha nishidyate. अतः वृद्धिरेचि इत्यस्य प्रसक्तिः अस्ति. वृद्धिरेचि इति प्रसज्यते अनेन बालौ इति रूपं सिद्ध्यति. So at any particular step, there might be number of sutras that are competing together, number of adeshas that are competing together, number of agamas that are competing together. The viable candidates are all being represented, or they get represented using the word prapti. The winner who actually ends up in coming over there is called prasakti, or is that action is represented by prasakti. Prasajjate iti shabdah prayujyate. This is not a rule written inside Ashtadhyayi. This is a general convention that I have seen used across various commentaries. Is this clear? You can find an instance in the commentary which violates my observation, but this is what I have learned. I have explicitly learned this from a teacher, and this is what matches what my general observation in most of the commentaries. Clear so far?
So guna and so just to clarify, guna and vriddhi. So tatra competition asti chet vriddhi bhavitum shaknoti chet. So then you will say guna sandhi guna sandehe praptihi asti kintu vriddhi sandehe prasaktihi asti.
Something like that you usually say. So praptihi asti, prasakti asti. Nobody uses this word. Iti prapte iti rishidyate. So usually you end up using sati saptami. Iti prapte iti anyat sutram pravartate. Iti prapte vipratishedhena anyat bhavati. But you always see this word iti prapte, and that is usually to indicate that something is about to come, but it doesn't come. Okay, I'll give you similar examples. I mean, we are digressing a little bit, but there are two words, uddesha and upadesha. Very similar words, but they have very distinct meanings. Another one, varna versus kara. What is the difference between akara versus avarna?
Avarna is all the Ashtadasha Prabhedaha.
Have you ever heard a term called avarna? Have you ever come across a term called uvarna? No. A varna will always be on the first member because it carries everybody, all the savarnas. So avarna means a and a. You never say avarna. Whereas kara is for that particular entity. Akara means raswa a and its 6 bhedas. Akara is dirgha a and its 6 bhedas.
What about
Clear?
kakara?
So correct. Kakara is just the varna ka, not ka kha ga ghanga. Just the varna ka is kakara. Right? So kara is that specific varna and not the other bhedas. Clear?
No, you said
Now
akara.
again, this is not a.
No, you said when we say
akara
kara,
means
there is a grahana of all the savarnas.
There is no savarna grahanam. No.
Okay.
Akara is just a. That's why we have akara and akara as separate words. Do you have avarna and avarna? You never say avarna. Has anybody heard this avarna business? No, right? Avarna. Because avarna will include a. But akara does not include akara, so you have a separate akara over there. Now, this distinction between varna and kara is not hard and fast, embedded as a rule in Ashtadhyayi. There is a Vartikam which says varnat karaha. But I have seen people sometimes using akara to indicate a and a both. Once in a while it happens. Okay, so you have to take it as with a pinch of salt. In the same way here, prapti versus prasakti, the general understanding that you should take up is that anything that is supposed to come but doesn't finally get the winning position, we say prapyate or prapte pratishidyate or prapte kenachit anyena tasya nishedhaha bhavati. And something that actually ends up coming as a final sutra in that competition, we call it, it cannot be sutram, it can be adesha, agama, whatever, we call it prasakti. Right? So that prasakti word is used in the current sutram over there. Just because 10 things are possible in that particular prakriya and they don't come up doesn't mean we call them lopa. Right? If something actually comes, sits over there and gets removed in the next step of the prakriya, then we call it as a lopa. So here he has used a very precise word called prasaktasya and not praptasya. Prasaktasya, it must appear in the prakriya and then it undergoes a lopa, or then it is removed in the further step. That is called lopa. Clear? Physical appearance in the prakriya must be there at some or the other step, or right from the Upadeshika form, whichever, and then it will be called a lopa. Clear? Very precise and beautiful word. Prasaktasya darshanam lopasamyamsya, not praptasya darshanam. Clear? The question that I have is, how do we understand prasakta from the sutra itself? The sutra is adarshanam lopaha. I might as well create praptasya adarshanam lopaha. How do we understand that Panini really meant prasakta over there?
The prapta does not actually exist, right? Like only.
No, it does exist. It might not exist in the prakriya, but it might just exist, right? Or even I have a even basic question over there. He just says adarshanam lopaha, which means that something that is not visible lopa. So I am going to go one step ahead and I say, in Ramaha, is ting pratyay, tip pratyay visible over there? No. So tip pratyay se lopaha bhavati iti aham vadami. In pathitum, is tva pratyay present over there? No. So adarshanam lopaha, tasya lopaha krutah. So is there a problem if I say pathitum ityatra tva pratyasya lopaha asti?
There is no prayojanam.
No.
It never existed, right? So tva iti pratyayasya lopaha na bhavati, tasya abhavaha bhavati. So
okay, so how, I understand that, but how do you gather all that from adarshanam lopaha? What does Panini say? I mean, what Bhattoji Dikshita and Varadaraja say is different. We'll come to that. But what does Panini say? Adarshanam lopaha. What is the problem in my thinking? In Ramaha, there is an adarshanam of ting pratyaya, so there is a lopa of ting pratyaya.
When we say adarshanam, something is there and that has vanished. That is what is adarshanam, right? So, but in Ramaha, there is no, that ting pratyaya isn't common, right?
If you say the ta pratyasya lopaha or whatever, there is no prayojanam for that. You can keep on saying for
then
many things.
possibilities are endless.
यत्र रामः आगच्छति विसर्गः अस्ति विसर्गस्य प्रसक्तिः अस्ति विसर्गः भवति एव किन्तु आगच्छति अत्र विसर्गस्य लोपः भवति प्रसक्तस्य विसर्गस्य लोपः अत्र विसर्गस्य अदर्शनम् एवं वा?
That is exactly what I am saying. In agachati, there must be visarga lopa, there must be tva pratyay lopa, there must be tumun pratyay lopa, there must be sup pratyay lopa, there must be nich pratyay lopa.
Endless, then those possibilities are endless.
Because it is not there, so there is no question of lopa there.
What does the word adarshana mean? It is not there.
Adarshana means something which was existing, but it is not.
So how do you know that adarshana means something was existing?
Because only when something exists, it can vanish.
But where are we saying it is vanishing? We are just saying it is not visible.
That's what I mean. Only when it is, only if it was there earlier, it can become invisible.
महोदय, अस्माभिः न दृश्यते, किन्तु अस्तित्व अस्ति.
My basic question is this: how do you get this from the sutram adarshanam lopaha? As far as a beginner like me is concerned, adarshana means na avidyama. Sorry, what? Darshanasya bhavaha. It is not visible. All this additional information that you are bringing in, it used to be there and it must exist and all that. How do you get it from the word adarshanam lopaha?
No,
is my
darshana.
question.
We have to then analyze the word darshanam. What is darshanam?
That is okay. Drishyate iti darshanam iti vaktum shakyate.
So what is drishyate?
No drishyate. No drishyate.
No.
Shashashrunga. The horns of a rabbit.
Shashavasya shrungah astitvat eva nasti. There is no
business, this weird concept of astitva, where do you get it from adarshanam lopaha? Does it say
Drishyate.
अस्तित्वस्य अभावः
What?
लोपः?
न दर्शनस्य अभावः लोपः.
So do you
दर्शनं
see
नास्ति.
do you see
Yeah,
the horns of a rabbit?
No, the existence of the horn is itself not there. What
But
we
who
are
is
saying
talking
is that
about the existence? Who is talking about the existence? Is the sutram
darshanam.
having a darshanam is visible. Drishyate iti
Ah,
darshanam. So we are not talking about existence or not existence of a sutram, pratyaya, agama, adesha, anything. As far as Panini says, see, all other things you have been programmed to think in certain way and you are trying to impose that. My whole goal is to pull you out of that whole thinking frame. Don't think the way you have been taught to think. Look at the sutram adarshanam lopaha. It is non-existence is equal, sorry, non-visibility is equal to lopaha. Now, adarshanam can be reinterpreted into multiple ways. This Kashika says ashravanam, abhavaha, and so on, everything else. Where is this prasakta? Let's stick to the discussion of grammar. Where is this prasakta coming in the picture? In Pathitum, there is, listen carefully, 1 second. In Pathitum, there is Adarshanam of Tva, there is Ashravanam of Tva, there is Abhavaha of Tva, there is Anupalabdhi of Tva. So why don't I say Tva has a lopa in Pathitum? The fact that Tva was not mandated in the very first place is your own programmed interpretation that you are imposing on me. The Sutram does not say that.
The usual answer, Vyakyanameva Sharanam.
Very nice, very nice. I agree. So this is the last resort and we will come to that. Wait. So he gave a very brilliant answer. Vyakyanameva Sharanam. Vyakyanato Vishesha Pratipattir Nahi Sandehad Lakshanam. If you have a question, go to the Vyakyana, then Vyakyana will say Prasakta. I am going one step over beyond that. Why does Vyakyana say Prasakta? If I want to write the Vyakyana tomorrow, how do I know it is Prasakta? How did Bhashyakara understand it is Prasakta? Nalini.
Lopaha is defined because you want to use the lopa in somewhere, right? So if everything that is not visible, if you take it as lopa, what is a karyam left for you to do? So if there is already something, then you can say make it lopa, if you see it. So
that makes a
it
logical
doesn't. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
So basically what you're saying is that you don't have I'll come to everybody else, but let's tackle this argument first. So what Nalini is saying is that she does not have a problem with me calling Twa Pratyay getting a lopa or Ting Pratyay getting a lopa, but what is the point in doing that? Let us say Twa Pratyay undergoes a lopa. Okay, I am happy, you all are happy, but then what? It has no value further in the process. So because that particular extra samnya has no prayojana, so you don't do it. This is perfectly valid line of argument and I will come to that in 1 minute. But before that, I'm not like closing that topic. I'll come to that topic in a minute. This has been actually explained in the Bhashya right in this way. So Bhashyakara says, again, in Adarshanam Lopaha itself, the Bhashyakara says that all kinds of Adarshanas, basically Twa Pratyay, he uses the example of quick Pratyay, should be called a lopa. And then the student asks a question, well, there needs to be a prayojanam. Let's park this thought and we'll come to this in a while. Sumanji.
No, I'm saying the same thing. If you say Ramaha tatra ting pratyaya nasti, tatra tva pratyaya nasti, then you can, that list is endless, right? You can go on with that list. So there's no, it's pointless.
Correct.
And one more problem, if we take it like that, Mahodaya, if everything is lopa, then pratyay lope pratyay lakshanam might come and sit everywhere, and then you will call it will create a lot of confusions.
Correct. So for example, if there is no ting pratyaya in say kartum, if I say the ting pratyaya has a lopa, then by pratyay lope pratyay lakshanam, I will be forced to call kartum as a pada because there is a ting pratyaya which has undergone a lopa. So it is very evident that this kind of interpretation of lopa that I was forcing on you is not going to work. Why it is not going to work is exactly for this reason. This was the the sutra that I was looking for. Pratyay lope pratyay lakshanam. Pratyay lope pratyay lakshanam causes a problem. This has been elaborated in the bhasha, and the simple example is that in Pathitum, for example, if you enforce a ting pratyay over there, it will start becoming a pada, which is what we don't want. Right? So we all agree over here, something must be present over there, and this is how we logically conclude that randomly a ting pratyay cannot be called a lopa in context where ting pratyay is not there. My next question is this. Okay, how do you understand or how do you justify that Panini really meant what we all are trying to agree upon? Is there a way in Ashtadhyayi by which we can somehow bring in the meaning prasakta using Ashtadhyayi itself? Because understand what is happening. Let me complete the question before you jump on the answer. The sutram says adarshanam lopaha, and this prasakta business is being added by the vyakyanas. Obviously, we can say vyakhyanato vishesha pratipattihi. My question is it possible for us to give an evidence or somehow, it may be not a great evidence, still somehow try to put this prasakta word in the frame of Ashtadhyayi and say that Panini actually meant prasakta over there. We all agree that it should be prasakta. But Panini, did it really mean prasakta over there?
That's what the pratyaya lope pratyaya lakshanam then will go out of place, right? So we can use that as an argument to, or you are saying the definition itself, like the exact.
The definition itself. So pratyaya lope pratyaya lakshanam still has a value. It can still be used in the cases where a real pratyaya lakshana is needed, right? Okay, I think I'm confusing you more than what I should. So let's actually look at the list of the sutras. In this adarshanam lopaha, you go a little bit above, and you see the sutram shashti sthani yoga. Have people studied this sutram or no?
Yes, Mahodaya.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
What is the vritti of this sutram? What is the explanation of this sutram?
Sthani.
Anirdharita sambandha vishesha shashti sthani yoga buddhya. You have to memorize what is there in the commentaries. Where is Siddhanta Kaumudi? Anirdharita sambandha vishesha shashti sthani yoga buddhya. What do your Laghu Siddhanta Kaumudi say? Oh, there is no commentary. Happy. Okay. Understand this. Anirdharita sambandha vishesha shashti sthani yoga buddhya. Will not go in the details, but this is very important. Sthanam cha prasangaha. The sthana word in Shashti Sthani Yoga does not mean Ucharana Sthana. It means prasanga. It means the occasion of something being present over there. I think I might have explained this in my explanation over here. Sthana Shabdaha Prasangavachi Darbhanam Sthani Sharihi Prastaritavyam means what? Darbhanam Prasange. When there is an occasion of having the darbhas, you bring the sharas instead. Darbhanam sthane, it does not mean there are darbhas and you pick the darbhas, put it away and then put sharas over there. It doesn't mean that. When there is an occasion of darbhas, you put the sharas instead. So asa astehe bhuhu, asa ityasya sthane bhu bhavati. When you want to create forms like bhavishyati, asa becomes bhavishyati. Asa ityasya sthane bhu bhavishyati can be interpreted as by saying asa ityasya prasange. When there is a prasanga of using the asa, you use the bhu. So sthana shabdena prasanga sambandha svikriyate. Prasanga is the scope of application over there or the presence over there, and that's exactly the sthane word which some commentaries take as an anuvrutti in adarshanam lopaha. Sthane adarshanam lopaha. Prasange sati adarshanam lopaha. When there is a scope of something and that doesn't come, that is called adarshana. Clear about this? This is one or two commentaries that talk about this. There are other commentaries that take the word sthane from sthanen taratamaha. There are multiple sthanis over there. There is yet another commentary that takes the word sthana from sthani vadadesho nalvidhau. So you have a sthana over here, you have a sthana over here, you have a sthana over here, and then you have adarshanam lopaha. So the way they try to bring the meaning of prasakta into the system is by bringing the word sthana from somewhere and then trying to interpret it by saying that when an entity actually exists, that being removed is called lopa. Clear? Any questions on this? So prapti is one step before. There is not even a prasanga. So you have multiple entities competing with each other. Some entities lose. There what we call prapti. Now the winner, there is a prasakti, there is a prasanga of application of that, and then it gets removed. That is how the word sthana is brought in and interpreted in the Adarshanam Lopaha. Let's take a look at a few commentaries in Adarshanam Lopaha, starting with Balamanorama. Balamanorama says, Sthanentaratamah ityatra sthanam iti anuvartate. So he brings it from Sthanentaratamah. Tattva Bodhini brings it from somewhere else, if I'm not mistaken.
So the sthana is a prasanga, then that question will also be answered there. Like, how do we interpret sthana as a prasanga? That it will raise that question there, right? In the Shashti.
What happens is, in Shashti Sthane Yoga, the word sthana means prasanga. So meaning of the words can be understood from the commentaries. Vruddhiradeich ityatra shabdasya kaha arthaha iti vyakhyana jnatum shakyate. If everything was clear from the sutras, there was no need of vyakyanas. So vyakyanas can definitely be used to understand the meaning of the words in the sutras. Vyakyanas can be used for everything else. That's what the first paribhasha says, vyakhyana to vishesha pratipattihi. So what Sadagopanji said is 100% correct, that if vyakyanas say prasakta, we accept it as prasakta. We don't need to do this fancy anuvritti thing. But the point is, commentaries have done it. So I am trying to present it to you. So Tattva Bodhini talks about sthana being anuvritti. Balamanorama talks about sthana being anuvritti. Some other guy, definitely not Sudha Teeka, but some other guy, let's see, Padamanjari, for example. Sthanam cha prasangaha prasanke yasya adarshanam tasya lopasamya. So sthanam cha prasangaha is exactly what he says. From Shashti Sthani Yoga, you take it over here. Now he takes it from a different place, but let's see other nyasa also. Sthani vadityatra sthani grahanam. So somebody brings it from sthani vadadesho nalvido. Somebody brings it from sthani intaratamaha. Somebody brings it from Shashti Sthani Yoga. The reason I taught you Shashti Sthani Yoga is because in Shashti Sthani Yoga, the meaning is unchanged. In Sthanentaratamah, the meaning is different. In Sthanivada Desho Nalvido, the meaning is different. He brings that word from either of these and changes the meaning. But what I did is I brought it from Shashti Sthani Yoga so that the meaning remains unchanged.
So, Madhu, with respect to anuvritti, I had a question.
Yes.
Doesn't it have to be, how can you say I can do anuvritti from this sutra and somebody else does anuvritti from a different sutra? First of all, doesn't anuvritti have to be kind of continuous? And two, isn't it kind of different from adhikara in the sense that it has to be to the to close sutras only, right?
I'll take one full lecture to explain this. But okay, has everybody understood the question? Anuvritti has to be continuous. Biggest objection. Second is, how can one person bring anuvritti from one place and another from another place? Okay. Anybody wants to say anything on this?
I have an addition
Mandu
to this.
Pluti and all is already there, right?
So somebody brings in Mandu Kapluti. Very nice. What is the difference between Anuvritti and Mandu Kapluti? Mandu Kapluti is jumping like a frog. So Anuvritti is in the continuous sutras. Mandu Kapluti is jumping. So there's no Anuvritti here and the Anuvritti comes over there and then Anuvritti comes in some 10 sutras later and so on. Okay. So we have these two. I have not yet discussed, but we have these two words, Anuvritti versus Mandu Kapluti. Sudhaji, you have a related question? Let me take that as well.
Yeah. The difference between anuvritti and adhikara.
Okay. The Anuvritti and Adhikara. Okay. Anything else?
Anuvritti eva tasya prayojanam adhikarasya iti.
Okay.
No, not necessarily, right?
Okay. Let's start. These are very basic concepts. First of all, difference between adhikara and anuvritti. Adhikara always represents a particular prakaranam or a particular section. Adhikara sutram does not have a meaning on its own. Pratyayaha is the adhikara. Pratyayaha sutram does not have meaning on its own except for saying that this is adhikara. It continues in the all other sutras, and every time you define a new pratyaya, you say this is a pratyaya, this is a pratyaya, this is a pratyaya. So the fundamental thing about adhikara is that adhikara sutra says swasya arthaha nasti. The only thing that it tells is that this is the beginning heading of a prakaranam, and it gives a word which needs to be imported in every other sutra. On the other hand, anuvrutti, the word has a purpose in its original sutram, and the fact that it undergoes as an anuvrutti is a secondary value. Even if the anuvrutti is removed, still the word will continue to exist as a valuable entity in the original sutram. Whether or not you bring the anuvrutti of sthane in any of these sutram, the word sthane has a value in Shashti Sthane Yoga and it will remain over there. On the other hand, if you remove all the sutras from the pratyayadhikara, saying I don't want pratyaya over here, I don't want pratyaya over here, I don't want pratyaya over here, the original pratyaya sutra loses its importance. It can be completely removed.
So that is correct, right, Mahodaya? Anuvrittihi eva tasya prayojanam asti.
Anuvrittihi eva adhikarasya prayojanam asti. Whereas in case of actual anuvritti, moola sutre api tasya prayojanam asti. Is this difference clear, or is there any particular question on the difference?
In one adhikara, within that adhikara particularly, everything will not become anuvritti, right?
That is correct. So adhikara is, that's what I started by saying. Adhikara is a topic heading. Not everything in that adhikara will be an anuvritti. Correct. So for example, pratyaya, adhikara. So there will be sutras where you just give an adesha, agama, something, and it does not need to be a pratyaya. Right? So it's not necessary that the adhikara term will be verbatim appearing over there in all the individual sutras. That is the basic point. We call it as a topic heading. On general, it will be representing the concept that flows across those many sutras. For example, like 641 is Angasya. 641 is Angasya. It's an adhikara that runs for 5 padas. 6471, 72, 73, 74. Sometimes it even changes to Angat. So Angasya ityasa sthane kutrachit Angat ityapi vadamaha. So that is also okay, because Angasya, what comes as a verbatim is not important. These all karyas are related to Anga. That's all that the Angasya adhikara says. There will be sutras in which there will be pratyaya karyas. So for example, the entire Idagama Prakaranam, which gives an Idagama on the Pratyayas, is in 7.2 in the Angadhikara. So there you change Angasya to say Angat and say Angat Parasya Pratyasya Idagamaha Bhavati. So adhikara, as you correctly mentioned, is a topic heading. You do not look into each and every sutra individually and say, or put a stick and say, why is it not coming over here? Why is it not coming over here? It's a general representation of the concept in that particular section.
Like Samhitayam. So far?
Like Samhitayam. Very good, very good. Samhitayam is the adhikara. There is no like. Samhitayam is the adhikara. And it exactly is like, not everything in that adhikara is necessarily Samhitayam, but he just puts an adhikara. Very good example. Let's come back to the other question of the consecutiveness of the anuvritti. Now understand this point, and this is extremely important. Let's go to the very first sutram of Ashtadhyayi. Vruddhiradeich. There is a vruddhi term over here. Adeng gunaha. There is a guna term over here, which means the vruddhi term, is there an anuvritti of vruddhi term? No. The third sutram, iko guna vruddhi, it says guna vruddhi shabdabhyam yatra guna vruddhi vidhiyate tatra ika iti shashthantam padam upatishthate. He uses the guna vruddhi 2 times. And he says one guna vruddhi is over here, and second guna vruddhi comes as an anuvritti from the previous 2 sutras. See, he uses guna vruddhi 2 times. There is a guna vruddhi here and guna vruddhi here. Now, I know you might not have studied this sutram. You have not, right? Or have you? You have not. So forget about this. But this is all the way at the beginning of Ashtadhyayi, so I gave this example. He uses 2 words, guna vruddhi and guna vruddhi, and he says one guna vruddhi is right there in this sutram, And other guna vritti comes as an anuvritti, vriddhi from the 1.1.1 and guna from 1.1.2, right? And he just says anuvartate. Let's see this. वृद्धिरादेश अदें गुणः इत्यतः वृद्धिः इति गुणः इति च अनुवर्तते. Now I'm sure you might have 100 other questions on ko guna vriddhi. I'm not answering any of them. What I'm trying to say is that anuvritti has a very precise meaning over here. A word can silently pass across the consecutive sutras without showing its existence, and we still call it anuvritti. Anuvritti can pass silently if the presence of that anuvritti does not harm the sutram. Anuvritti does not necessarily mean that the word must be used in that subsequent sutras. If you were not aware of that, register this. Anuvritti can pass silently without it. All that it says is that I will not bother you. I will sit as a fly on the wall in one corner and I will not bother you. And when you need me 20 sutras down the line, I will still be the fly on the wall and you can pick it up and use it. And therefore, the word sthane can come as anuvritti because it is silently passing through the middle sutras without causing any drastic disturbance.
So
Clear?
if the anuvritti concept is clear. So if it doesn't have to kind of come in consecutive ones, then why do we have that concept of manduka plavanam pluti or whatever? It's not needed, right?
Again, you did not understand me. Anuvritti has to be continuous. All that I'm saying is that it is not exhibiting any effect in the middle sutras. It's still there.
No, then why do we need that manduka pluti to justify?
Correct. That's a good question. So the answer is sometimes anuvritti gets broken down. For example, I say lopaha bhavati, lopaha bhavati, lopaha bhavati, lopaha bhavati, and in the next sutra I say lopaha na bhavati. Now simultaneously you cannot say lopaha na bhavati. So obviously when you say lopaha na bhavati, lopaha bhavati is that anuvritti is blocked. So presence of lopa in the next sutram will cause a disturbance. So then you don't bring that anuvritti. And then 4 sutras later on, again, if you are talking about lopa, then all that you have to do is you have to bring it through the manduka pluti. Clear? So that is the reason why manduka pluti is extremely rare and they do not have many examples of manduka pluti. Wherever possible, they will use anuvritti because this particular concept of silently passing down through the sutras without appearing or without exhibiting any kind of presence is accepted. Clear?
Samyak. Yeah, Samyak. Dhanyavad.
Okay.
So
Let's
can
finish this discussion.
be taken to previous sutras?
That is called apakarsha. It is extremely rare, but it does happen. Anuvritti taken from the subsequent sutras to the previous sutras is extremely rare, but it does happen. We call it as apakarsha, not anuvritti.
Lion looking back.
Looking back, apakarsha, correct? And anuvritti in general you can consider, but apakarsha is always based on the vyakarana. If the vyakarana says there is an apakarsha, only then there is an apakarsha. Otherwise there is no apakarsha.
Mahoday, I have a question in the Sashti Sthani Yoga itself.
Okay.
Is that okay to discuss now?
Can we keep it on hold for now? I want to finish Adarshanam Lopaha, otherwise we'll end up in the next class. Or do you want to take it to the next class anyway? Shastratah arthatah prasaktasya praptasya uccharanam drushehe jnanasamanya tasya nishedha asambhavad. Let me try to explain this. So going ahead, so prasaktasya means what? It is actually appearing over there. How is it appearing? Shastratah arthatah. Shastratah means by the rules of the grammar. There is a competition, somebody wins and that comes up. Arthatah. Kinchit prayojanam asti tatra. We have been saying again and again. Some purpose is there, that comes over there. So in case of Rama, does not have any prayojana, it does not come. It is not even given by the sutram. So something that is given by the sutram and it has a prayojanam, similar meanings. Tasya praptasya uccharanasya adarshanam ityukte ashravanam iti lopaha. Drushehe jnana samanya karthakatvat. Drusha does not mean visible. Words are never visible. in the language they are heard, so other or they are understood. So drusha is a blanket frame of all types of cognition. Even we have these astika darshanas, nyaya, yoga, sankhya. So darshana means something that is understood. So drusha word is not to be taken as a visible only related to eyes. It is a general cognition, and general cognition cannot be blocked. Therefore we say uchcharanam na bhavati. So for example, as soon as you say tumun and you get rid of na, still there is a cognition of na in your brain. So when you get rid of na from tumun, you're not saying I don't know what is na anymore, or I have forgotten na, or I have lost my understanding of na. Nothing is happening. So some kind of darshana in a broader sense is still there. So what is not happening? Pronunciation is not happening. Earlier you used to pronounce tumun, now you are pronouncing tum. So pronunciation is not happening. So he says drushehe samanya arthakatvat. Drusha has a wider meaning that cannot be denied. A cognition cannot be undone. So ucharana sattayaha nishedha. What kind of nishedha is being done? The pronunciation nishedha is being done. You are no more going to pronounce the ukara and the nakara in tumun. You are only going to pronounce tum. So ucharana sattayaha eva nishedha iti bhavaha. Samapayamaha. I leave you to this point. We'll talk about this particular aspect in the next class, and then we will go to Tasya Lopa.
Then why
Any
can't we
questions
call it
related to the topic?
Tatpurusha Samasa?
Because adarshanam would essentially mean that with a Tatpurusha Samasa, it would mean that some other kind of cognition is still there. Shravanam is not there, Sparsha is not there, nothing is there. What is happening, what he is trying to say over here is that undoing cannot be done for all the cognitions, so we specifically focus it on ucharana. It doesn't mean that you don't want to do undoing of everything. You want to actually do undoing of everything, but it cannot be done because the word drusha is used in an extremely broad sense. Even like antardhyanam is still called drusha. That's how the word darshana, seers, how the rishis got the whatever nyaya, sankhya, and so on, all the knowledge, darshana. That cannot be undone. So you try to do as much undoing as possible, but you make sure that the undoing thing is important. So we treat it as avyabhava. Avyabhava is definitely a better fit in this context than tatpurusha. Clear? Okay, so I leave you on this thought. We'll meet next week as usual. येनाक्षर समाम्ने अधिगम्य महेश्वरात् कृष्णं व्याकरणं प्रोक्तं तस्मै पाणिनिये नमः. वाक्यकारं वररुचिं भाष्यकारं पतञ्जलिं पाणिनिं सूत्रकारं च प्रणतोऽस्मि मुनित्रयं. तत्त्वा सरस्वतीं देवीं शुद्धां पुण्यां करोम्यहं पाणिनीयप्रवेशाय लघुसिद्धान्तकौमुदीम्.